today, because that will lead, of course, to diseases and well, a lot of other problems, right? But by going forward as an example, Singapore points to how cities can feed themselves, and it's also a very circular approach. I don't know how many of you have been in Singapore, but if you have, you see these big, big waters in Singapore. That's actually, if I understand it correctly, also drinking water, and it's being, constantly, maintained, constantly purified, so that everyone can have clean drinking water, and you can just circulate that. And now, how can you also build food into this equation? That's basically what Isabel was writing this report about.
Is the report available that we can all
I'm not
find?
entirely sure.
Okay.
I've seen it. I was one of the informants for it. We've run it through a presentation with a group. This was done together with A-STAR, which is the development agency of Singapore. And one of the interesting questions that came up actually during this report was, is 30 by 30, is that achievable? Yes, sure, it's achievable. And A-STAR said, yeah, perhaps we need to go beyond. Perhaps we need to go beyond 30 by 30. Perhaps we need to go towards 50 by 30. And we will hear more later on how we actually can deploy new technologies that would enable this to happen. And this means that if we can start building new ways of growing food or constructing food in our cities, that means also that we need to push nature less.
Yeah.
So I mean, from an economics perspective, I guess food doesn't have to come from nature, right? It has.
No, I mean, some argue that farming is unnatural in its state because the earth doesn't produce it; we make it produce it. So in that sense, it is unnatural.
Exactly. So then we can actually urge tech to produce food in the same way as nature, because nothing is natural with food production, as you say.
Yeah.
I don't know, tech team, do we have any hopes for this? No, we don't have any hopes for this. I think we'll instead move over to the next point. We'll get back to Isabel on another occasion. She's a great woman, and if you want to do anything in Singapore, please seek her out. She's just an amazing connector and fountain of knowledge. But fortunately, we have prepared additional speakers from Singapore. Let's bring instead up on stage Anuj Maheshwari from Temasek. Big round of applause for Anuj. And this also goes for an applause for Isabel. Sorry, it didn't work out. But Anuj, please take the hot seat here. And you're from Singapore, which means that you can call out all my lies that I just told about Singapore, or verify that there were indeed truths.
I think it's indeed true that you can produce food in the city. In fact, there is some research which says when the world is highly urbanized, 60% of the world's population is going to live in cities, we will need cities to feed themselves. We can't just depend on the rural economy to produce all the food and the urban economy to consume all the food. And I think in Singapore, we have identified 3 things that we need to do to do that. One is controlled environmental agriculture, vertical farms, greenhouses, and so on and so forth. Aquaculture, which is possible to happen inland using recirculation and so on and so forth. And I think the third one is alternate proteins, which don't require as much land to produce. Especially, you know that Singapore approved cell-based protein last year as well. So those are the ways which hopefully Singapore can produce 30% of its nutritional needs.
That's
Singapore.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And you will invest in all of that because you're, of course, head of Ag and Tech, Ag and Food at Temasek. And tell us a bit, what is Temasek?
So Temasek is a global investment company. We are headquartered in Singapore. We have one shareholder, which is the government of Singapore. We invest across industries. We started investing in agri-tech and food tech about 10 years ago. I started that team with a very strong focus on technology, really trying to solve 3 problems in the world. We need more food, we need better food, and we need to produce food without destroying the planet. But I think that narrative has obviously changed over the years because as climate change dawns upon us and we can see the variability in the climate, the food sector is also the one that gets affected most by climate change. So we need to have resilient food systems as well. So we've added another line to have resilience in the food system, and we can see that with what's happening in Ukraine. So over the last 10 years, Temasek has invested about $1 billion every year in this sector. We have about 50 companies that we are investors in. Some of the companies you have probably heard of: Impossible Foods, Perfect Day, Farmers Business Network, but also in conventional incumbents in the food and agriculture space. So we've invested with Cargill, with ADM, with Nestle, Danone, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so you invest $1 billion per year, which is usually a food tech fund is 100 million or something like that. So $1 billion is you're kind of a tiny little fund, Temasek.
It is Temasek is among the larger investment funds in the world. So about 300 billion is the total size of Temasek. Our portfolio in the agri-tech and the food tech side is very small percentage of Temasek.
Yeah, but the very small thing of something very, 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 very huge is still huge, right?
It is still huge.
It is still huge. Okay, so which makes you probably one of the largest food tech investors in the world, right?
Probably one of the more active ones. I don't know if there are others who are larger than us, but we believe, as you rightly said, put your money where your mouth is.
Yes, okay.
Literally.
Okay, so tell me, we talk a lot about, good investors in food, but I kind of claim that you're a great investor in the world of food, because you're not only doing investments, you're doing some other stuff as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, our strategy is not just in being an investor, and we do invest in companies, early stage companies, more stable companies as well. But the other thing that we try to do is two things, which is promote research, because research plays a very, very important role. In fact, Temasek has a research institution called the Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory, where there are 225 PhDs and scientists who do all sorts of work around different aspects of animal and plant sciences, and it's headquartered in Singapore. So we do promote research. We have a contest called the Livability Challenge, whereby we give out $1 million to a winning startup. No, it's not venture capital, it's just a grant. So we do, through our foundation, give a lot of grants. We support research. But in addition to being an investor, we also from time to time build companies. So really start from looking at a white space, and if somebody is not doing anything about it, we would find a management team, we'll come up with a business plan and start something. So one of the things that we started last year is our sustainable foods platform in Asia. We think that sustainable foods are going to continue to grow around the world. There's a lot happening in Europe, lots happening in the US. But in Asia, the need is a little different, because Asia is many countries, different palettes, different regulatory frameworks. So we want to work through a platform where we can provide scale-up facilities, fermentation, extrusion, and so on, and research and development to our companies. So this platform is supposed to help companies gain scale as well. So really different roles we play as an institution, and try to also bring the ecosystem together in Singapore. I think Singapore has really developed very nicely in the last 5 years to be a vibrant hub for agri-tech, food tech, and Temasek tries to play a role in that, in trying to bring it together as well.
It would seem to me that, okay, that Singapore has put together a very nice little package here, because you have a strong ambition, 30 by 30, or 50 by 30, whatever that turns out to be. You have Temasek investing a lot. You have policy framework turning Singapore into some sort of sandbox for next-gen foods. What else is it that you do that we need to know about and copy?
No, so I think Singapore, in addition to all you said, is also really the gateway to Asia Pacific. And that's very important, because Asia is complicated. You have China, you have India, you have Southeast Asia, you have North Asia, and then you have Australia and New Zealand. So these are very different markets. And among the top 20 companies in the world, food companies in the world, almost all of them are present in Singapore. And most of them have their research and innovation labs also over there. So the other thing that Singapore is doing is, besides the policy framework, besides investing, is also supporting research through the government in the sector. So Singapore government announced about $150 million investment into research last year. So the additional thing would be research and development as well, because it's very important. Because not everything can be done by venture capital. Certain things need to be done at a pre-venture scale to understand the problems, and capital needs to go in, and that's where the government also plays an important role.
And the entrepreneurs you've worked a lot, many that I've spoken to, they talk about the technology. That's not really the hardest part. We think we can solve that. You get the right experts. But the market is very difficult, especially if you're not an end consumer forwarding product. What are you finding? What is difficult for the entrepreneurs, especially when you need adoption from sort of the industry itself? Do you find the same?
Look, my view on that is when the product market fit clicks, um, companies or products take off. So if an entrepreneur is saying that it's very difficult to get adoption, I really think they need to go back and see if their product solves all the issues. I think there is this concept of that you need to have products which should just get into the market. I certainly believe that products should be developed at a really at a level where consumers start adopting them. And sometimes entrepreneurs and investors ask companies to go into the market too early. I'm not a big believer of that, especially in the food space. So if I look at our portfolio of about 30 food tech and agri-tech companies, some of them which have gotten the product market fit right are seeing exponential growth. And the ones that have not are struggling with the question you are seeing. So I really think it's for the entrepreneurs to look into it. I mean, there are enabling things. There are more things that can be done. Obviously, food is mispriced as a resource. I think government should play a role in making sure that food is priced properly. The externalities of food are taken into account. Governments can do a lot more. But I think it's for the entrepreneurs to get the product market fit right.
Okay, lovely. And getting the products right, you should probably come to Singapore and develop your products as well, right? Not just bring them there for the market trials, but it seems to me like it's becoming a development hub as well.
Absolutely. Singapore is a big development hub. There is a lot of companies innovating on plant-based, on cell-based in Singapore. Some very exciting technologies coming up, and really working with the technology development agency, A-Star, with the government providing grants and aids, and of course investors like us who play a role in that as well. So Singapore certainly is becoming more than just a hub for going to Asian consumers, but also development of technologies. And that's what our hope is, that technology development will happen closer to where the consumers are.
And now, of course, I'm wondering where you will put your next $1 billion here. You mentioned once, you basically invested 500 mil this year so far, and then you will invest another 500 mil. Are there any specific areas you're looking at right now that are more interesting?
Well, I think this group over here knows that the food system is very complex, from farm to fork. There are just amazing opportunities that come to us on a regular basis. We were early investors in the alternate protein space. We continue to back that space. But I think the most exciting things that I see today are in 3 areas. One is the soil organic carbon economy. I mean, I have a big belief that the solution to climate change is going to come through the soil. The soil is the greatest absorber of carbon. Soils used to have 7% carbon. Today, soils in places like Australia are at 1 to 2% carbon. And that 5% soil carbon has basically gone into the air and is causing this global warming. So if we can find technologies to measure and to sequester carbon back into the soil, that is a $1 trillion economy out there. So I think this whole soil carbon economy is very interesting to us. I think the second thing is digitization of the whole food value chain. We see massive opportunities in the digitization. I think post-COVID, Everybody's realized that things need to move digital, whether it's B2C or B2B or B2F, which is the farmers. In some of the platforms that we have backed, like the Farmers Business Network in the US, in e-fishery in Indonesia, in certain platforms in India called Dihat and others, we're seeing massive uptake of digital solutions by farmers, by consumers when it comes to food. I think all of us are buying more food through e-commerce post the pandemic, and I think that's kind of flowing through the entire value chain as well. And I think the third one is really the power of microbes. I think through precision fermentation, through synthetic biology, through genomics and all the omics that we have, we've realized that microbes are phenomenal factories, and they can produce from alternate protein to materials to fix carbon into the atmosphere or fix nitrogen and give it to the plant. And we believe that a lot more will happen on discovering microbes that can scale up. So these are some of the areas that I'm very excited about. Obviously, there are so many things that can be done still.
Okay, so lovely. So there's a lot of things happening, and you mentioned 300 billion in the fund right now, and you're deploying 1 billion a year. Do you see investments in food tech going up?
Well, last year we had a pretty big year across the upstream, midstream, downstream. There was almost, I understand, the Ag Funder report said it was almost $50 billion. 2022 is going to be a difficult market for venture capital. I think most investors are going to stop and take some stock at what's happening and what's happened to their portfolio. So I think it will be a struggle to see that it actually increases from last year. But look, my job is not to predict what happens in the short term. I think in the long term, this space holds a lot of promise. And as you can see with the development of ecosystems like you have in Sweden, there will be a lot more entrepreneurs that will get into it. And as entrepreneurs get into it, the governments and the funders are going to continue to back these companies. So we think it's definitely a trend which will continue to grow. Whether it grows this year is tough to say.
Okay, so 30 by 30 could also mean 30 billion by 2030.
Well, it'll need a lot of investments to develop, an urban agriculture system in Singapore. So that's required. Whether Temasek invests $30 billion is tough to say, but we certainly are always looking to meet exciting companies. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
here. So, we have something from the test kitchen here. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, so what do you have? Is this medicine?
Exactly, it's fermented rye bread.
Fermented rye bread.
Scandinavian, especially for you.
Okay. Will I die or? Yeah, okay.
And you'll die for sure. One day. We cook it with
This is not rye bread.
that's rye bread. 100%. Fermented.
It's
Solid state fermentation.
this is ridiculous, guys. I cannot even describe, but this is just umami, concentrated umami flavors on a spoon.
On a spoon, in a bottle,
In a bottle.
and on a spoon.
And on a spoon. By the way, guys, this is Jair from Med. Yeah, Med Reina-Food. And he's one of our super chefs that are down there in the kitchen. So come and take that. It's not medicine. It's better than that. That was good. Thank you very much. Come try it. Exactly. So, do we have tech team? Do we have Isabel? Yeah, thumbs up. Isabel is back. Now,
Hello.
Isabel, I hope this goes better this time. You hear me?
Hi, Johan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Wonderful. So good. So we've been talking a lot about Singapore and the stuff that you've been doing. So tell us a bit more now, Isabel, the report that you did now together with A-Star, and what were your main findings then?
So, yeah, the report commissioned by A-Star was really about having an independent, unvarnished perspective on urban food production models, best practices. And the very interesting thing is, I had the intuition that if we started to compare a plant factory to another plant factory, we would get nowhere. So we started from this seemingly trivial question: why do cities produce food? And we unearthed a very wide range of situations. And we realized how much food shapes our city. So you're asking about major findings. The very first one is that Singapore is in a very unique situation. Um, there is always this willingness to compare and to borrow from the best in class, like Israel, the Netherlands. They've been pioneering agri-tech, but we found out that there are less commonalities than what you could think of. And depending on why you want to produce food in your city, then the solution will be very different. Take, for instance, Atlanta, take Paris. They're defining their urban food production in very different terms than Singapore, who has defined it as 30% of the calories by 2030 should be produced domestically. Atlanta want to revitalize some district and suburban part of the city, which are prone to petty crime. Paris want to have a very certain number of hectares green. The second thing we found is as soon as you have a hinterland or peri-urban belt, you just never have the same incentive of growing vertically. So again, Singapore is in a very, very specific situation. The third thing we really looked at is across the world, who is making money growing food in city centers?
Mm.
Very hard question. You can make money selling basil and parsley and herbs. You can. More than this, the jury is out. And I'm really talking about city centers. I'm not talking about the suburban part of cities. So I'm not short of examples of entrepreneurs who've tried salad, kale, strawberries. It sounds to be the Saint trilogy. We've analyzed failures, and very interestingly, there is a pattern, very simple one: lack of understanding of the market. The last point, which I think is a very good segue into all the topics that were discussed so far, is that cities need to close their loop. It's a social imperative, it's a business necessity. We don't value food enough. We waste quite a bit along the journey. We know this, but cities need to close their loop. If they want to produce more food, they also need to take care of their waste and they need to be able to repurpose it. Why not as a biofertilizer? In some aspect, we can also talk about organic waste. I know socially it's a difficult topic, but cities should be able to close their loop, all the more so if they want to produce food. And the last thing is, even if you don't believe it, in very dense cities like Singapore and many others in Asia, there are always pockets of opportunities to seed a farm and to set up food production. We had the pleasure of welcoming in this discussion the CEO of Priva, Maini Prince, and she's really on a mission to inventory all the idle spaces in the big cities of the world. So that's in a nutshell.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this is a lovely. By the way, is this report available for others to read, or is it?
People can just get to me, and we can share some highlights, not the full report, but we have been sharing it quite widely in multiple instances, including IFT. So it's neither completely confidential nor completely public.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so Singapore is in a very special position. We all understand that, and I think it's especially in so many ways. But what do you think? How could we in Europe, say Paris, that you know very well, and Stockholm, that I know pretty well, how can we learn from Singapore when it comes to the stuff that you've discovered?
I think the key learning is not a direct like for like cut and paste of whatever city is doing to another city. If you change a parameter like the cost of electricity or the way the electricity is provided or the land use policies, you completely change the equation. And it can be completely enough to make a very viable urban farming model completely doomed. I think what I've learned is that you need to go back to the fundamentals. What are we trying to achieve? So cities need to ask themselves if they can play by their strength. If you have capacity to co-generate power in a given premises and repurpose this power for some other use, if you can reuse water out of another premise to power your hydroponic systems, and so on and so forth. The solution will not be the same whether it's in Singapore, Taipei, Stockholm, Paris, but the thought process can be very similar. The second thing is the good coordination between the multiple stakeholders. And there are many. There is not just the entrepreneur, there is also the local authorities, the local government agencies. You also have the finance world. And a good coordination is very important. You want to see the farm on the rooftop. You can imagine how many hassles you need to go through on whether the rooftop is able to cater to the load, to the water, to the irrigation, you name it.
Okay, good. I think what I mainly take away here is that Singapore, and I've seen that in other instances as well of Singapore, that there is an amazing coordination between various parts.
Exceptional, yes, absolutely.
And I think that's probably what we lack. I think we claim to be very coordinated in Sweden and other Nordic countries, but I don't think we are to the extent that we should be, right, Maria?
Yeah, exactly. There's always work to be done on that.
Yeah, it's always work to be done there. And would you say, because one thing that we've been trying to push in the city of Stockholm is to have a common joint understanding that food can be something more than just what's on the plate. It can be something that can facilitate integration or improve school results, whatever. Is there a common understanding, you would say, in Singapore?
I
What
think
food
there is
is?
definitely room for improvement in Singapore, like in many cities, that something we've lost sight a little bit, I think, over the past decades, is that food is more than just calories. Food is a social lubricant. Food is a very, very strong integrator. And there are many ways to play with food. I don't believe there are many urban farms that are not developing somehow other ancillary activities. Depending on where you are, it can be event, it can be educational workshop for kids and schools, it can be the retailing of some product and seeds and gardening, tools and things like this. But there is definitely more than just producing food. There is an educational need behind, all the more so that you would assume people are happy seeing their greens, their leafy greens grown hydroponically. That's not always the case. For some people, good food is food with the dirt from the soil.
And
Go
may I
ahead.
ask a question? And how do you see who's responsible really for this? I mean, we've seen cities like New York and Boston now have urban agriculture departments. Do you feel things like that are necessary? Who drives these types of initiatives in cities?
Oh, I definitely think government agencies have a very important role to play. We've seen many cities, you've mentioned a couple of them, where the mayor has a department taking care of it. I can cite offhand a couple of cities in the US. Most of the time, there is a social agenda behind. Because cities are very different from Singapore, most of the time they have a peri-urban belt, they have a hinterland. Most of the time, the first driver is not like Singapore, self-sufficiency and domestic production. Most of the time, the agenda will be social first. Reincorporate a bit of green, reincorporate a way to teach people how to eat more healthily, and also really in many cities it's been a very powerful lever to bring people back to the market. People that were just jobless and then were falling into a difficult situation, to bring them back into jobs that are very good jobs, by the way. These are the jobs of the future, and I like to call them the green collar workers, because there is a whole category, a whole emerging category of jobs that were not existing before, and that need to be taken by somebody in the cities.
Lovely. I think the notion of green collar workers will have to be the final words here. Thank you so much for joining us, Isabel. It's been wonderful as usual. Okay.
Thanks for having me today. Have a good
Big
time.
round
in
of
Stockholm.
applause. Okay, let's move over to the next stage here. Let's talk about one of those technologies that's going to conquer the world. And this one, I hope, will blow you away, because it did blow me away. Up on stage, Susha Charanasati, please, the founder of Nanoponics. And if you wonder what nanoponics is, okay, there you have the clicker, Sushant. And if you wonder what the nanoponics is, we're going to bring forward the sci-fi show here to show an experimental facility. This is just a showpiece. This is actually exists in larger settings as well. Sushant,
Thank
it's
you
a
very
pleasure to have you here. It's an honor as well. And take it away from here.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for giving me a chance and on the platform. This is the first time we ever publicly display our technology and our system. There are private visitors visiting our place before, but we have never gone public with it, and so this is the first time. The technology that we're talking about, it really, in order to grow vegetable grown thing in a very efficient manner, in a very, very large scale. So I would have said, take a reminder, you have geoponics, which is basically use soil base that have been with us for almost 100,000 years, 50,000 years of human existence. Then you have progressed about 30, 40 years ago into a hydroponic. And with the hydroponic, you are essentially using the molecule of the water liquid. Then you kind of, with the advent of the jet spray, you go into the aeroponics. And so the world had been moving from soil into basically aeroponic. And then I think today the more advanced agricultural system, commonly known as aeroponics, but essentially the most common platform for them domain is actually water molecule. The water molecule had its own limitation in that if you drop a water molecule from the rooftop down here, it changed the time it go down because it lost the humidity along the way. So in order to get that, also the gravitational force and various other stuff, actually resulted in a very unstable situation. And that's why you see a lot of vertical farm today, limitation were 2 meter and 3 meter. Anything about that, they have a sort of problem. So if I talk about stay at geoponics, you have big land usage, you have runoff of the fertilizer into the river, your contamination, you use pesticide, you use all kind of stuff. You don't have to go far, but just go to the countryside of some of the emerging country. Then you know the problem of geoponic. It's actually well existent around and well documented. Vertical farm using hydroponic, aeroponic had already advanced the agriculture and efficiency to a certain level that I think it's acceptable to us today, but if you really break down in terms of a chord, it is still beyond the reach of the common people. So if you look at the vertical farm today, be the best standard, the vegetable is still at the prices that higher than if you can buy from emerging market in the third world country. So there is still the impression that the vertical farm is the vegetable for the rich. Okay, that's still, and then the result of that, we end up having to growing some very expensive thing, kale, growing things like lettuce and all that. But if you were going to go into cheaper local vegetable for common use, vertical farm today is still uneconomical. So what we are trying to do is about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a team of developers based in Bangkok. I am Thai, living in Singapore for 30 years, and my full-time job is I'm running a real estate private equity fund based in Singapore, headquarters. And we have funded this team of people, scientists, engineers, based in Bangkok, and then technology came from the oil and gas industry. So what you are seeing here is combination of, in here, 2 technology, but in our modern bigger farm here, you're going to have 4 technology combined. The first technology, we use colloid gas. So you use soil, water molecule, then you jet it into a spray, and the water drop from the top to the bottom, you start growing. This is a very well-known method of vertical farm. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to criticize others. I'm here just to talk about what we're doing differently. So we're actually using the same plant food nutrient in liquid or solid format, but we liquidify them. Then we sap them with actually the sound wave in order to make them converting the liquid into colloid gas. This colloid gas is the steady state. If you go to Google, the word in Greek, in colloid, it means that it stays the same almost forever. What it means is that it had different from the problem that you suffer from water soluble problem when you drop a water molecule from 30 meters away. When they come down here, they actually shrink to about 1/3 inside. They lost water, but at the same time, the nutrient is highly concentrated. With the colloid gas, you have a steady state. The colloid that came out, if you transport it for another 500 meters away, it stays exactly the same. So that's colloidal gas. So we have been jumped into using colloid gas. And why do we use colloid gas? You can see this gas coming out. This is actually not a very good example because normally you shouldn't see gas coming out. But because this cup was there and it was light, there's no plant in it, so the gas do come out. This gas is totally harmless. This is from NPK. Exactly the same thing you use to grow the vegetable, any other form. So there's no toxin or anything in it. So this gas would carry to this tube, mostly from the top to the bottom. But then we use another technology known as the Bernoulli principle. If any of you would probably in the fluid dynamic principle, when you do oil and gas industry, when you transport gas, you do not transport gas by putting the fan and pushing them and all that. You actually negative, positive pressure. So the gas coming down here is not pushing, it's just negative, positive pressure. And when that happens, the gas moves almost effortlessly, which means that not only we have make plant food into something very, very light, we have always also using Bernoulli principle to transport in our system, kind of like 24 hours a day, 365 days in our system non-stop, using extremely low energy, which means that we could really move away from the pain point of existing system. And as I said, I'm not here to criticize any system. I'm just telling you what the system does. This gases, and it allows us to be able to build it to almost at high at 9 to 12 meters. And I can transport the gas from the bottom to the top. It doesn't have to be the top to the bottom. It could be anti-clockwise, it could be clockwise, depending on how I calculate the mathematics of the laminar flow, and then using the fluid dynamics principle. Which means that in this system, it almost use, really, really very little energy and very little water. What we have done also to growing this vegetable for the last 3 years, we had a farm in Thailand, we had a farm in Singapore. In my office, number 2, Nassim, we've been growing vegetable, we've been consuming it. The vegetable have been tested by Singapore authority and known to be clean, to be free of any contaminant. This vertical farm today had already proven that producing 40, 50 different kind of vegetables. Later I will show you. We also grow many different kind of plants. So it is not a vegetable growing system. It's a plant growing system. So instead of using soil, water, spray, water molecule, we go into colloidal gas. But material is exactly the same. And then using a very complicated, I must admit, Bernoulli principle to control the flow of gas. Why it's important? Because when you control the gas, it doesn't collide. If you collide, it will be a problem. So if you cannot control the gas in a constant manner, you had problem. And this is why people in the past could not have done colloidal gas for a long, long time. But the moment you can control the constant flow, which we were able to, you can have this going up there, come down, and go to the sideway, come out, growing vegetable over. It flow in a constant manner. And what we also had discovered from our experiences, the root of vegetable is actually about 40% the size of a normal, you grow in the soil, and also smaller than you grow in a hydroponic system, but the output is the same. System is totally clean, so when you plug it, you can just eat it. It doesn't have to be watered. And the utilization of water is extremely, extremely low. I think the vertical farm had done a very good job when you compare to geoponics. But for us, we have bring it further into the extreme. So what we have done, as an example, is that per kilogram of vegetable that we produce, we have measured how much exactly water we've been using. and it turned out with 0.4 liter. It's extremely low. We kind of did it proven. So we have done it 3 years already, so we know it works. And because of this, we were able to traceable everything from beginning to the end. Whatever nutrient you use, put in there, all input, all output, nothing in between to contaminate it. This is control agricultural environment. The second thing that we have done, technology. So I hope I have able to, in a short minute, to describe to you the colloidal gas technology in terms of it essentially converting today plant food in a new format, feeding into the root of the plant, and then plant grow. Okay, so it works. And then agricultural, vertical farm agriculture still suffer from two inefficiency that remain to be solved. One, air conditioning. So when you're a tropical country, you have to put in air conditioning. And then you also have on containerized, you have to bring in LED lighting. So in our example, the early version, for the 40-foot container, we had 800 meters of LED lighting. Today, we got rid of all that. The lighting technology that we have today under the sustainable group is that we had a receptor, we're increasing the light intensity, and we carry the light down to the fiber optic, and then we bring them down and radiate them to grow the vegetable inside. So we're able to rid totally the LED lighting. The 800 meter of LED lighting in a 40-foot container, it's creating heat, so your air conditioning have to overcompensate it for it. We got rid of that. And if you need to work at night, we have small 4 little LED lighting just to supplement the using for lighting purpose, but not at the light energy to grow vegetable, not for photosynthesis. It's just for lighting purpose. So that we have saved almost 70% of today vertical farm electricity because of that. On the air conditioner side, we went to demotorize the air conditioning. This is our second technology, that we use Peltier and CBAC. I don't know any of you, kind of like thermoelectric expert. We have a Peltier to creating the coldness, and then the coldness into the Peltier, the hot and cold. We use the CBAC impact to harvesting the heat to put back in the system. So for a typical 12,000 BTU air conditioning that we use for a 40-foot container, usually you have the best of the standard, it's about 1,300 kilowatt. So you buy Daikin inverter today, 1,000 kilowatt. Our air conditioning system, because we got rid of the compressor totally, and then we only have Peltier and CBAC effect, and generating the same coldness into the fan coil, our electric consumption would reduce to about 300 watt. So if you look at the total number, 100% of energy used, 70% used to be LED lighting, 30% used to be air conditioning. If you got rid of that 70%, and then you got rid of 80%, your 30%, the residual energy you use of intensity, it's roughly about at 6-7% of what full-blown controlled environment today would have been. So that two technology combined together were able to allow us today to have an extremely efficient. So we are designing a farm in Singapore today. The government was very kind, gave us a piece of land in Upper Thomson. The size of the building is not larger than this hall, in center epicenter. We decided to contain 7.5 million head of vegetable, 9 meter tall, and then the output roughly about 2,000, 2,200 tons per annum. Just for this, the water consumption is extremely low. The energy consumption also extremely low. So we have containerized, we have smaller scale, and with it, I will have to flip over to what we are doing, just presentation. Did you see any of this?
I think.
Hi, today I'm in Bangkok. It's the 28th of April, And I go,
No, no.
hi, today I'm in Bangkok.
Sorry,
It's the
that's not
28th of
the.
April.
Sorry, that's
And
not
I'm
the
going to show
intended. I think the word, huh?
This
There
is
you
the
go.
one.
There you
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I want to go to next. Yeah. So you can see the nanoponic system. It's the tubular form. You can make a 6 or 8 head, and then about 10 centimeter heat. So if you do 9 meter, we can do 800 vegetable head in this tubular form. So for us, per square meter of land in a very land-scarce country, we can produce probably a ton to 1.5 ton of vegetable. That's the land we needed. Okay, so this is nanoponic. The left-hand side is in our farm in Bangkok. The right-hand side is what we just give to Singapore Changi Airport for them to operate. It's a gift from us.
Sorry, may I ask a quick question? On the Thailand there, if it's very high, is that to harvest? Do you have bridges? How do you do the harvesting if it's 9, 12
Correct. This
meters
is the 2.95 meter tall container. So this is within inside the container. Yeah. And the way we decided it's exactly the same. What did it mean? We already fast forward thinking about robotic technology, because you can bring down the robotic and just take it out, harvesting it. Next, this is how we grow the vegetable. We've been doing it for 3 years on our own. This is a total self-fund project by me. So just to let you know, we didn't take any capital from any VC and anybody. And this is the household. We believe in democratization to the household. So this, if you can be very skilled, if you can grow 60 head of vegetable in your household to welcome your friends every month to come in, you can pluck the vegetable fresh. And if you believe that you have larger member of population in your family, you can do this model that had a 4 tower, about 240 head, and consume extremely low energy. Next, this is what we have grown. We've grown tomato, we've grown strawberry, we've grown vegetable, we've grown Asian vegetable, we've grown Western vegetable. We have done flower, edible flowers. We're working with some famous chef in Thailand to grow edible flower for them. This is also the vegetable we have done in the past. So you can see the list of vegetable there. We have grown roughly about 40 different kind of vegetable, many kind of fruit, and many kind of herb, and many kind of flower in our system. We have do horizontal and growing buckwheat. So we're in the process of kind of expanding the arsenal of what we can grow. I know we're running out of time, and then
Yep. You
fruit
are.
and the
So-
flower. And this is on the left-hand side, it's our Bangkok farm. And on the right-hand side, it's in my office in Singapore, number 2 Nassim Road.
Yeah.
We have a farm there. And we believe today, because of the energy use was so low, we believe in the next few months, we will come out with a vertical farm that actually is zero carbon. And that's something that we're working towards. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, a big round of applause first, yes, because I don't know if you guys realize how bloody cool this is, because suddenly you're using absolutely no energy whatsoever, basically, for this. And as you say, a no carbon, including the whole life cycle analysis of the construction, which means that this is actually lower carbon than natural farming, which uses carbon. Okay?
Yep.
So this is better than nature. The levels of energy means that you suddenly have twisted the entire yield and cost equation of urban agriculture into something else. It's going to be really hard for natural farmers to compete with this going forward, if you factor in transports and other things.
And in terms of the need of the humans, it's extremely manageable. We had designed a system, 26 factor in here that we control, Did it all cater toward the data mining, data collection, remote control of the, so we in Bangkok, we can control our container, and in Singapore, exactly how they want to do. We have all this set up in our place already.
And the final thing, nanoponics, you're actually using these colored gases, you're having these super small particles that basically go straight into the cells in the root system and get transported up into the leafy greens, which means that you essentially could push other types of molecules into plants than you could before. So that means different types of tastes, perhaps, different types of nutritional properties, which means that suddenly plants aren't just plants anymore. They're bearers of things that nanoponics can bring to them. This is the biggest shift I've seen so far in CEA in all my life in food tech. And I'm so happy that you came here and
Thank you.
showcased that to us, Rishad.
Thank
A
you
big
for giving
round
us
of applause.
Thank you for giving us a platform. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
So very good. We're actually starting the program downstairs as well on the disruption stage, and while we move this one away, I will also